What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Sports Talk with Hawk. We are finally done with the NFL draft. I apologize last week. I did not get any of my draft podcasts out. My wife and I took a getaway without the kids trip and had a freaking wonderful time. It's actually the first time I've been out of the state for something besides work in 3 years. So got to get away for a little bit, had a freaking fantastic time. But we were away for the NFL draft. So I was watching everything take place on my phone while we were out and about. And back to the normal grind this week. And here we go. Get us started on a Tuesday morning. Wow. It went a little bit differently than we thought, didn't it? So we're gonna do this kind of twofold. You guys like it when I do series? They end up getting a lot of they get a lot more views because they're easier to follow and everybody can kind of watch what they're doing and so on and so forth. Here we go. We are going to do once again. We're going to go through. We're going to do the division. See, so excited, can't talk. Probably got to slow down a little bit here. Hang on, let me take a drink. All right. Now, take a deep breath here. I loved the draft. The intrigue, the amount of prospects, the kids who were drafted in the second and third rounds that would have next year been first or early second round picks. First rounders that fell to the second round. All over the board. I myself loved watching this totally play out. It was great. I loved watching it totally play out. So let's do a generalization here let's just do a quick 5-minute generalization. The big wrench that was thrown into this draft was the Michael Penix pick from Atlanta. Everybody's, basically like, what were they doing? How could you do this? You needed this, you needed this, you needed this. I want you to think about something. Next year's draft class isn't half as good as this year's draft class. Kyle McCord, Dillon Gabriel, Quinn Ewers. It doesn't look great. Shedeur Sanders. Reality is they've all got a lot of question marks. Quarterback question marks. It's not great. You don't want to have to need a quarterback next year. I don't know what you're thinking. The Falcons signed Kirk Cousins for 4 years, $180 million. Yes. But all that guaranteed money is in the first 2 years. Years 3 and 4, they can cut him with no dead cap. None. Zero. He's 36 years old, coming off of an ACL injury, and you got arguably one of the purest throwers in the NFL, let alone the NFL draft. Michael Penix throws the prettiest ball. Yeah, he throws a better football than Caleb Williams. It's Caleb Williams' athleticism that is really the driving force behind it. But he's a Kyler Murray. I have told you guys, Caleb Williams reminds me a ton of Kyler Murray. He had one of the best college coaches, an offensive system built around him. Kyler Murray and Caleb Williams need everything to be right to be able to win. But when it comes playoff time, you punch them in the mouth, they don't get back up. And you saw that happen with USC multiple times. Caleb was not able to lead. He got punched in the mouth and couldn't get back up. So you've got now Kirk Cousins on a 2-year deal, and you are going to let Penix sit behind him, of which may not be sit behind him. The other thing people are forgetting is last year we had 66 quarterbacks start an NFL game. Guys, we only have 32 teams. Times that by 2, it's still only 64. We had 66 quarterbacks start a game last year. 66. And you're going to try to tell me that the best roster in the NFC South is stupid for getting an insurance policy on a quarterback? They got the best starting quarterback in the division, and now they got the best backup in the division. Yeah, was it a head scratcher at the beginning? Did it throw a monkey wrench into everything? Heck, yes. Does it make sense, though? Absolutely. Because you can get your linebacker next year. Next year is going to be defense. And if you win the division, you're not drafting any better than 22nd. 22nd is as high as you're going to draft being a division winner. So you're not going to do anything. Draft your defense next year. You can plug and play for this year. You got an offense that can compete. The other thing is the Eagles are absolute masterminds of the draft. 8 trades, moving up, moving down, moving around, getting the needs filled. Eagles are dang good at drafting. Buffalo Bills also spot on. Houston Texans, once again proving they're great at personnel. The last thing here that we'll go over before we get into the teams, went a little bit longer than I wanted to, but last thing we'll go over is, and San Francisco kind of showed their hand. By drafting Ricky, I believe it signals they'll trade Ayuk probably during training camp, maybe preseason, to a team that has their top receiver get injured, and they need somebody to make sure that they can make a run like they want to. They don't want to pack it in. There's a lot of teams that could be. There are a lot of teams that could be. So do not underestimate who it could be. Jacksonville is definitely sitting there. If I was Jacksonville, I'd go after T. Higgins before I go after Brandon Ayuk. But Brandon Ayuk, you'd be able to immediately give a max deal to, but I don't know if they have the cap for that. Cap is a little bit tight. I'm not sure they're going to have the ability to. I'd go after T. Higgins. As far as Ayuk, going to need somebody that's got a little bit of cap space. I could see the Giants making that move in the mid-season, getting ready for the year after, Malik Neighbors and Brandon Ayuk, something like that. All right, so let's run through this. We're going to go division by division once again, and today We're going to include the NFC West into this kind of draft overview. Now, why do I want to do the NFC West? Well, primarily one reason. It's got the teams that know what they're doing in it. The Rams and 49ers have perfected being able to draft players late rounds that end up being the players that you want on your team in a year or two. The Cardinals this year, I think, did a fantastic job of setting themselves up. They had 3 third-round picks, 2 first-round picks. And I said this, and I have said this, and I have said this, and when my buddy I talk to every night finally said the other night, he goes, "You're going to die on this hill of the Cardinals should have switched coaches." And I said, yes. I do not believe for a second that Gannon is a coach that can do this. So this is what they drafted. I'm going to go position before I go name. I'm going to go position before I go name. So the front office for the Cardinals looked at where they're at, saw they got a lot of holes. They got plenty of holes they needed to fill on that team. And these are the positions they went after. Receiver, defensive end, cornerback, running back, offensive tackle, tight end, corner, safety, edge rusher, tackle, wide receiver, corner. They took care of the holes. They still got they still got holes to fill. Don't get me wrong. But they gave themselves a building block. Marvin Harrison Jr. Who is going to be able to deny the pick of Marvin Harrison Jr.? We knew they wanted him. They knew they knew he was their guy. We knew that. No doubting it. No doubting it at all. Loved the pick. Loved the pick. Knew it was going to be there. Kyler Murray. Listen, if Arizona can make a trade, okay, if Arizona can make a trade to a cap-strapped team, if they can make a trade getting, the number 2 or number 3 receiver, like the Cowboys are strapped, but all their guys are gone. Michael Gallup is now with the Raiders. What about Cooks? Could they go get Cooks to play opposite? He's a good, good second hand here. The guy I really love, though, it's going to be an under the radar pick, but it's a pick that I love. They picked Darius Robinson, the defensive end from Missouri. He is a true defensive end. He didn't have a huge 40 time, but he's played defensive tackle and defensive end. This is a true 34 defensive end. 6'5", 285. He'll probably put on 5 to 10 more pounds, be 290 after he gets in the NFL weight rooms. This guy is good. I think they needed another draft. They can wait till next year. I don't think they're going to be horrible this year. But I'm saying when they get next year's pick, being able to combine him potentially with next year's first-round pick, if they go defensive line next year, the defensive lineman from Ohio State, I think gives them a legit defensive line. The corner they drafted in the second round, Max Melton. People see Rutgers, and they're like, why Rutgers? Simple, because the guy's a reactionary. He's a reactionary QB. Okay? Max Melton is going to come in and he's going to start opposite of Sean Murphy-Bunting. He will be starting. You draft a guy in the second round, you can't do much better than the fact that he's going to be starting. You look at their third round picks, Trey Benson, the running back from Florida State. I love the pick. James Conner's injured a lot. You got to have a backup that can play. Isaiah Adams, the offensive tackle from Illinois. Absolutely love the pick. Needed an offensive lineman. Tip Raymond, the tight end from Illinois. Zach Ertz was released. McBride is all right. You needed a number 2. I think a guy maybe, and when I say we're going to do this, the sneaky pick for each team will be a 6th or 7th round. 5th rounders have become seemingly, naturally, actually pretty good. So I'm going to use a sneaky pick for 6th or 7th rounders for each team. My sneaky pick, honestly, is the receiver, Tajuan Palmer. He had a huge average yards per catch, 18 yards per catch. He's 6'2". He's a bigger receiver. They needed receiver depth. They needed somebody for the injuries that arguably happened. I think he could be a guy, Marvin Harrison being the one. Michael Wilson has some injury issues, potentially being the 2. Look for Palmer maybe being able to sneak in there as the 3 and potentially sneaking in there as the return guy. So that's my sneaky pick for Arizona. All right. Los Angeles Rams. This is very Rams-esque, okay? They lost Aaron Donald, so we knew they were going to go defense. Most of us knew they were going to go defense unless they were able to draft Penix where they were for the future. By the way, just like the Falcons did, but it was 11 picks later. That was the difference. But I want to go at this a different way. You lose Aaron Donald, and I said this in one of the podcasts. I said they're going to do it by committee because it's not going to be about one individual player. It's going to be now about which ones are the ones making the most plays. So their first pick, and by the way, the first round pick, and I did not think this was going to happen if they didn't really want to. I totally could have seen the Rams trading out of this. The Rams actually wanted Brock Bowers, which I really understand because Higbee has been a hit or miss, a lot of miss, at tight end. So I fully understood them wanting to trade up for Brock Bowers. They were wanting to trade up into the top 10. So they're willing to trade some draft capital to be able to go get Brock Bowers. Nobody was budging, which we'll kind of close this episode with. Nobody was budging. With that being the case, then, they go and they get a sturdy, solid, true defensive end. Now, I like Robinson with Arizona in the 34. I love Jared Verse with the Rams. 6'4", 255, speed rush. I love this pick for the Rams. That was their first round pick. Their second round pick was a 6'4", 300-pound Braden Fisk, the defensive tackle that lined up next to Jared Verse. This is a Los Angeles Rams. This is a Rams organization move. Get the teammates. They trust each other. They trust what they do. They can stunt really well with each other. They can play really well with each other. I like Fisk. I really do. I like Fisk. And in the second round, pick number 7, I honestly felt this was a very good spot to go get the defensive tackle. Newton came off the board. You went and made sure that Fisk didn't go off the board to anybody else. Thought that was really good. The third round pick kind of confused people because they drafted Blake Corum, the running back from Michigan. This may have been a pick more to make sure that Jim Harbaugh didn't get him than them actually wanting them, because they have Kyren Williams. But Blake Corum with the guy like Sean McVay, they can use a second back for if Kyron's injured or really has issues. Corum could be used a lot. Receiving set, remember, Kyren Williams was used a lot in the receiving game. Blake Corum can take some pressure off of that. The pick itself isn't bad. It's where he was picked, because a lot of people had him going to the 5th round. 3rd round was a little bit early. They got their safety, Kareem Kinchens. I love him out of Miami. His tape sometimes, I would say 25% of the time is inconsistent. 75% of the time you look at him and go, yeah, I want him as my free safety. He'll learn, he'll grow. I want Kinchens as my free safety. And the Los Angeles Rams looked at the 5'11 safety and said, yeah, he's a ball hawk. Let's go get him. They didn't. They then drafted a. This is going to be the Rams' 5th round pick that probably ends up being really good. Brennan Jackson, the edge rush from Washington State. Most have him as a kind of a role player, like a Dean Lowry, Adam Godis, that type of scenario. You need those guys. The funny thing about this is, and I've always thought this is comical, especially in the NFL circles, like, okay, the guy's a role player. You need him. You need him to perform when he's on the field, whether it's 5 snaps or 50 snaps, he's got to play and he's got to perform. Maybe he's not an every play player, but without the guys that can give the starters a rest, you're in trouble. And I think Brennan Jackson, once again, defensive line. They're doing it by committee. Their next pick, the 6th round pick, Tyler Davis, the defensive tackle from Clemson. 4 defensive linemen. Why? They're replacing Aaron Donald. They did their homework. They're revamping that defensive line to what they need it to be. They're not going to trade for edge rushers. They want to build the edge rushers. My guess is if they have to make trades, they'll make trades on the offensive side of the ball or secondary. They got the kicker, Joshua Hardy from Stanford. My sneaky pick for them, once again, I got to. I really do. I've always liked the center out of Arkansas, Bo Limmer. I thought he should have been drafted a little bit higher. I think he's a little bit better than what this pick indicates. He's a 6'5", 300-pound center. I like him. I really do. I like him. And that's going to be my sneaky pick for the Los Angeles Rams. All right, let's go to the Seattle Seahawks. They didn't have a ton of extra picks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They got 8 picks this year. I believe some of that is still the trades that they had. So they did not have a 2nd round pick. So their 1st round pick, they went with the defensive tackle from Texas, Byron Murphy. Now, they wanted Penix. They were one of the teams that was looking at trading up for Penix. They wanted Penix. Nobody was moving. So they couldn't get him. Byron Murphy fills a gap on the defensive line that the Seahawks have. It's a legitimate pick. It was a needed pick. It was the right pick where they were. No problem with that pick. Their second pick, which actually wasn't until the third round, they got the guard, Christian Haynes from UConn. Like him, like the pick. Offensive line has been a struggle for them in recent times. Then they got Knight. This guy, fourth round pick. I can't call him my sneaky because I told my sneakies are going to be 6 rounders. I like this kid. 6'1", 233. He's a bigger linebacker. Bigger linebacker. Okay, he had 138 tackles. This, to me, is a guy that's a lot like Zaire Franklin from the Colts. If he's in the middle or he's sitting right on that side in a nickel-type defense, look for him to be the guy that just gets tackle after tackle after tackle. If he can continue to improve his feet, because he runs well. He's not a burner, but as a linebacker, running well isn't about speed. It's about where you go with the speed. Bobby Wagner, one of the best at being able to move. Not overly fast. Bigger, clogs the middle. I like this pick by the Seahawks. Okay? I like this pick. Then they went with the tight end from Michigan. They got Nehemiah Pritchett, the corner from Auburn, which I thought was a very good pick for them. They got off the offensive guard from Utah. Then they drafted Pritchett's teammate, DJ James, from Auburn as well in the 6th round. And then they got an offensive tackle, Michael Jurel. Michael Jurel. This is going to be my sneaky pick is going to be this one, just because not a ton is known about him. He's an Iron Man. He's had a bunch of consecutive starts, which is good for a team that deals with a lot of injuries. Very good for a team that deals with a lot of injuries. But there's not a lot known about him. It's an interesting pick, no doubt. No doubt. And it's kind of if he's healthy and he's just solid, he's not going to break the bank. You're going to re-sign him, but he's not going to break the bank. He's just going to be there. They can move him to guard. I think he could be that sneaky pick. I really do. He could be a 7th round selection that you turn around and in 3 or 4 years is starting every game, because he seems to be an Iron Man, and he's just starting every game, and they're not going to replace him because it's not worth it to financially or play-wise. So I like the pick. All right, last team. Shocker. San Francisco 49ers. This team has been so good for so long at doing what they need to do to keep their teams intact and where they need them to be. The reality is, this draft looked a little bit different. And I'll explain it as I go through the picks. Their first pick, the wide receiver from Florida, Ricky Pearsall, is a very 49er pick. They drafted the guy that plays the way 49er receivers do. He's a good blocker, good hands, coachable. That's what the 49ers want. Don't have a problem with that pick. Really don't. The problem comes in the second round. They drafted one of the corners from Florida State, Renardo Green, at the end of the second, the last pick of the second round. He doesn't fit San Francisco, really. He plays a lot of off-route coverage. Now, he's good at identifying them. He's good at identifying routes in college. But we know the college tree is simpler than the NFL tree for the wide receivers. So I'm looking at this a little bit differently, going, okay, and I know, questioning the 49ers seems like a bad idea. Well, the one thing I cannot question is drafting Dominic Puny from Kansas, the offensive tackle. Makes a lot of sense. Malik Mustafa, the safety from Wake Forest, makes a ton of sense. The running back from Louisville doesn't really make a lot of sense. Now, the wide receiver from Arizona, Jacob Coing, I think that one for me in the fourth round, I thought he was going to go in the fourth or fifth to a team, and I think he can develop really well, and I think he will. I really do think he will. I think he develops really well, and I think he'll be a very solid receiver. They drafted 2 receivers. They've had a lot of injuries at receiver, kind of makes sense. But then they went offensive guard and linebacker with their last 2 picks. The sneaky pick, honestly, I think is going to be the linebacker. In that defense, the way the linebackers are, I just have to believe that any linebacker that's drafted by the San Francisco 49ers is a pick that they were just waiting on being able to make. It's what I have to assume. Okay, it's what I have to assume. The kid from Penn State, he makes his way through traffic. He's a little bit shorter. He's 6 foot, so he's not. I know it's not short, but he's 6 foot, basically 230. It's a 7-round pick. Tatum Bethune. I love it. That name sounds like something the Niners would have. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Tatum Bethune. Like, seriously. Fred Warner. Like, come on. It fits. It does. It fits. This draft didn't feel the same for the Niners. Now, why didn't it feel the same? I don't know. I really don't. I don't know why it didn't feel the same. I really feel like it was just the draft itself was so deep. I think maybe the 49ers overthought this one a little bit because, I mean, the picks aren't bad, and that's not what we're saying. We're going off of what the need is, whether or not the draft picks fill that need, whether or not the draft picks fit the team. San Francisco doesn't have a ton of holes to have to fill. They were able to kind of fill a bunch through free agency, which is abnormal for the 49ers. So maybe that's what led to the draft being a little bit different. They were able to do a little different things. being able to play it a little bit differently. I don't know. But that's all I got. That's all I can have on the San Francisco 49ers. It's the way they are. It's the way they do things. Who can really question them? They've done fantastic. And hopefully all these picks work out once again. The 4th round, 6th round pick, the guard out of USC, knowing everybody else's luck is going to be starting in 2 years. Maybe starting this year, and all of a sudden, one of the best guards there is in the league. It's just how it works. And great coaching can do that. Great coaching will take care of a lot of faults. A lot of faults. All right, let's wrap this thing up. So the NFL draft as a whole, and we'll probably do this with every single opening of this while we're going through. We'll go through different aspects of the draft. So right now, let's just focus on the top 10 picks. The first 4 went exactly how I thought they were going to go. I was 4 for 4. I was texting my buddy. I'm like, all right, 4 for 4. The question mark was the Chargers. The Chargers took the guy the Titans wanted. Titans wanted Joe Alt. We all thought Minnesota was going to trade up to the Chargers pick to draft J.J. McCarthy. But the Chargers drafting Joe Alt kind of changed how the rest of that round went. That was actually the first one. I was right about Malik Neighbors to the Giants. So at this point, I am 5 for 6 in the NFL draft. The problem is I know I'm going to be 5 for 7 because I had the Titans drafting Joe Alt. Well, they draft J.C. Latham. And then the Falcons, who I could have sworn was going to draft Dallas Turner. They draft Michael Penix. The Bears, I said, were going to draft either Adunze or they were going to trade out. They drafted Adunze, stayed where they were. Very Bears move. They now have 3 receivers. But their 2 main ones have injury issues, so I can't really blame them for that. Then you had the Jets. The Jets made a move with the Vikings. The Vikings, with Penix gone, had to get their guy. They had to. Because Denver behind them, they felt was going to draft Nix. And they were worried that another team may go up to the Jets to get McCarthy. Either the Raiders or the Saints. Seahawks wanted Penix. That was the only one they wanted. Raiders or Saints could have gone after McCarthy. So the Jets get an extra draft pick just out of the Vikings making sure they got their guy. Then the Jets drafted an offensive lineman, which I had them down for an offensive lineman. I wasn't sure it was going to be Fashanu. It works. Absolutely works. The Raiders then got stuck. Legitimately, the Raiders got stuck at 13 and had to pick Brock Bowers. They had to. It was best available at that point for them. And it made sense. It works. It wasn't a bad pick. All right. I only want to go 1 through 10. We ended up going 1 through 13. 6 quarterbacks in the top 12 picks is exactly why the draft shaked out the way that it did. Shook out the way it did. We're going to go proper English here. That's exactly why everything played. The cards all folded down the way that they did. And the trades happened later, not earlier. We'll get more into that in the next episode. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you're on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button. the wonderful like button, and that notification bell for when the entire series comes out here on the NFL Draft. Who do they pick? Thank you guys so much for listening. For Sports Talk with Hawk, I'm Hawk, and I'm out.